morning, everyone. Welcome to Ender's Island. You may not know this, but over 1/3 of our 11 acres are devoted to gardens. And today we're going to be talking about our amazing Dahlia Gardens. And I'm here with Richie Joyce, and he's the head groundskeeper here. And Richie's working toward his bachelor's degree in environmental science at UConn. And he works very closely with one of our longtime volunteers, Gail Wentworth, who is an amazing dahlia gardener. In fact, she has over 1,200 dahlias in her own yard. So a little bit of history. In 2007, one of the days that Gail was volunteering here, she thought and asked and said to Father Tom, I really think I would love to bring some of my own tubers here and start putting them on Ender's Island. So what began as 2 garden plots is now over 24. There's an astonishing 90 dahlias roughly in each garden plot, and we have 24 of them, and there's over 200 varieties of dahlias. We're now recognized as one of the largest dahlia display gardens in New England. And in fact, in 2020, we established the Dahlia Preservation Trust to help preserve the gardens for the future. And this year, and Richie will talk a little bit about it, we're also planning a special Dahlia heirloom garden. So welcome, Richie.
Hey.
So let's start with what makes dahlias so incredibly special. Because I'm already a dahlia fanatic, so I know, but some of the folks watching us may not realize what that ugly little tuber delivers. So why don't you tell them a little bit about what makes them so special?
Really, what makes dahlias so special is the vastness of the beauty of their flowers. They only bloom for a couple months out of the year, and they usually go until the first frost, but they can be small, ball-shaped, very deep colors. They can be red, yellow, dark, purple.
My favorite, peachy,
orange, or a mixture of all those colors put together. And the first time you see a dahlia, you will say to yourself, wow, I've never seen a flower like that before.
And we've got some pictures to show you in just a minute. So if you're a first-time dahlia gardener, what do you need to do and know about when to plant it and how deep to plant it? Let's start with the basics, Richie. So tell us a little bit about the basics.
So when it comes to dahlias, you want a nice healthy soil for the best blooms. You want to have a lot of the dahlia flower colors are accentuated by their dark green leaves. So you want to have very, very healthy soil. You want to get them pretty much in full sun. The less shade, the better. There's been instances where there's been shade added to certain beds, even here on the island, and the dahlias haven't looked as good as they did when they were in full sun.
So how deep do I plant the tuber?
Oh, right. So you can plant them about 3 to 4 inches deep, depending on how big the tuber is. And you also want to make sure you have your eyes facing up, so that they shoot up out of the soil. And you can see here, this is an eye that's been fully grown from this crown of this dahlia. And these are some here. Let me just put this in my hand. You gotta be very gentle with these because you don't want to break them. These are some here. You can see they have small, very tiny eyes that are just starting to bud up.
Now, would I be planting a whole clump like that, Richie? Or would this be something where I would, say, cut it in half, being careful not to disturb the little tiny sprouty eyes that are coming up?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and one that's very important as well. So when it comes to when they're in a clump like this, so this is what they look like after you harvest them right around the first frost. Now, when you take them out of the ground, they're going to come out of the ground like this, a little bit less clean. You're going to want to clean the dirt off them, and you're going to want to put them in a nice, warm but dark environment. So usually put them in like a storage container. And before you plant them, you're going to want to divide them. So you're going to, and usually when you buy them from people, they come attached to the crown. And the reason why it's important that they're attached to this part here, put this down here. This is the crown here in the center, and this contains all the nutrients that the dahlia, its stalk grew out of here, right? Out of one of these tubers. So the stalk grows out of here, it takes in all the nutrients, and it produces all these extra tubers. So when you dig it up, you have all these extra tubers. Now you're going to want to cut it off, this part, the crown, separate them from the crown. That way they still have enough nutrients to form one of these eyes. As you can see, the eyes are only being formed from the crown of the dahlia tubers.
So that's the really careful part. Awesome. Now, you mentioned frost. So that in this area in New England, that's what, about last frost, second week of May, you know, like the 15th, you know, or is that the right time to start thinking about putting them in the ground?
Yes. Usually the beginning of May to the middle, the midweek of May. Some years it's earlier than others, but usually it's right around the middle of May.
Okay, so
start putting them in the ground.
Average temperatures at night over like 45 degrees, 50 degrees
Yes.
is what you want to look for?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And if for some reason you are not sure where you planted your tubers, one of the things I know you and Gail do all the time, which I made the mistake of not doing one year, is you put the stake in the ground right as you're planting the tuber.
Right.
Is that right? So that
Yes.
you know that's where it's growing?
We even actually, we plant the stake in the ground before we put the tuber in the ground. That way they have, and then we mark usually the tubers with like a tag. So that way we know which one is which.
Got
Because
it.
once they're in the ground, you're not going to, you're not always going to immediately know, oh, this is that, especially until they bloom. Because you won't know what the dahlia is if you put it there with no markings whatsoever, that it is, let's say, Jerry Winnie or any of the dahlia names.
Okay, so the process is, if I'm a first-time dahlia planter, nice, great soil. By the way, hint, and there's no sponsorship here, Coast of Maine soil, Richie and Gail told me to get. I went to Westerly Agway and got it. It is awesome soil. I'll be planting my dahlias in it. And so you put the stake in first, then you dig the hole.
Yep.
And should the little sprout tuber eye be above the dirt?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it should be facing, you could put it out of the dirt if you wanted to, but it should be facing
Up.
up
Got it.
to where you think the thing's going to come, the eye is going to come from.
Awesome.
Yep.
Okay. Now, when do they start to green up? Does it take like 6 weeks before it starts to green up? And then should you tie it to the stake right away? Is there any pinching I need to do? You know, tell us the next stage of growth.
Right. So after it's planted, eventually over a few weeks, you'll see the stem begin to come up out of the ground. And once that happens, you want to wait. You want to tie it up, I'd say, about every 6 to 8 inches. I mean, especially here on the island, where it's very, very windy all the time. And if a hurricane comes, you have to have them tied. So I typically tie them starting at 6 inches, and then I go about 6 to 8 as it goes up. Because some of the dahlias can be anywhere from like 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 or 5 feet tall, some of the dahlias.
Wow. Yes, I've definitely had some of my towering dahlias tip over. And there is a special variety that I'm particularly obsessed with, and it's called a dinner plate dahlia. And when I say dinner plate dahlia, I mean the bloom is, in fact, the size of a dinner plate. So those I'm especially careful to tie up. And then they make really awesome cut flowers, and they last a crazy amount of time once you cut them. And I think, isn't the philosophy to cut them before they're completely open so that they can open up fully once you put them in water? Like maybe when they're halfway bloomed or
Yes. Yeah, you could do that. So they kind of have they open slowly, and then they open all the way to the center, and then they fall apart. They look the best when they're not fully opened.
Right.
And we have some pictures of what they look like too when they're not fully opened as well that I selected.
Yeah. So in a second, I'll show you the still photos in a minute. So one of the things we just want to make sure we talk about is, in fact, for first-time Dahlia gardeners, we're going to have a special giveaway for the Seniors with Connections that I'll talk about in a second. And also, I'll be giving you information on how you can come up to Enders Island the first week of May for our special select tubers sale. So stay tuned, because we have a special giveaway just for seniors. And really, if you see Richie and you're out here and you want some advice, he knows, or Gail, he knows everything there is to know about dahlias. And I guarantee you, you will become maybe not as obsessed as I am, but you'll really fall in love with dahlias if you haven't already. Thank you so much, Richie.
Yes, you're very welcome. Happy to help.